The old houses of Millwood had seen their share of sadness, their walls whispering tales of sorrow and loss. But nothing compared to the story of Malena, a tale that would haunt the town forever. She was a wisp of a girl, all big eyes and shy smiles, her presence as delicate as a whisper in the wind. Her laughter, once bright as a sunbeam, was now a hushed thing, barely audible, like a distant echo. Her father, a man eaten alive by his demons, was to blame. His torment became her prison.
John wasn't always a monster. There was a time when he was a loving father, full of warmth and kindness. He'd been a loving father once, before the bottle took hold, before the darkness consumed him. Now he was a shell, fueled by rage and whiskey, a shadow of the man he used to be.
Malena started coming to school with bruises, small at first, easily hidden. Then they got worse, more frequent. A black eye hidden behind thick glasses, a silent cry for help that went unheard. A split lip blamed on a clumsy fall, a story that no one truly believed. The light in her eyes, once so vibrant, began to dim, replaced by a haunting emptiness. She was a flower wilting under a cruel sun, her spirit slowly being crushed.
The teachers noticed, of course. They saw the signs, the changes in her demeanor. They whispered in hushed tones in the staff room, their concern growing with each passing day. Social services were called more than once, but their efforts were in vain. But John, with a cunning born of desperation, always managed to convince them it was all a misunderstanding, a series of unfortunate accidents.
He was a good man, he'd say, just going through a rough patch trying to do his best.
Nobody believed him, not really. But they didn't have enough to act decisively. But nobody did enough to stop him either, and the cycle of pain continued. And so, the shadow over Malena's life grew darker. The laughter stopped altogether, replaced by an eerie silence. And the town of Millwood held its breath, waiting for the inevitable, a sense of dread hanging in the air. The whispers started subtly, like the rustling of leaves on a windless day. They were almost imperceptible at first, a mere background noise that could easily be dismissed. Kids noticed things. They saw the flinch in Malena's eyes when someone slammed a locker door. They were always observant, picking up on the smallest details that adults often overlooked. They heard the way she sucked in her breath when a teacher raised their voice, a fleeting look of terror flashing across her face. It was as if she was bracing herself for something far worse. Words spread through the playground like wildfire. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as they passed from one child to another. Malena's dad was mean, they said. He hurt her. The children spoke in hushed tones, their faces etched with concern and fear. The older kids, hardened by their own glimpses of the world's darkness, exchanged knowing glances. They had seen enough to understand the gravity of the situation. They'd seen the bruises, heard the muffled cries coming from the house at the edge of town. It was a place that seemed to hold its own dark secrets.
The whispers reached the ears of Mrs. Henderson, the kindly old librarian who always had a kind word and a warm cookie for her students. She was a fixture in the community, known for her gentle nature. She'd known Malena since she was a little girl, watched her blossom into a bright and curious child. She remembered the days when Malena's laughter filled the library. Now, she saw the fear etched into her young face, the way she seemed to shrink in on herself. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant child she once knew. Mrs. Henderson tried to help. She talked to Malena, gently coaxed her into opening up. She offered a safe space, a listening ear, and a comforting presence.
But the girl remained tight-lipped, her fear a palpable thing in the small, silent space between them. It was as if the words were trapped inside her, too afraid to come out.
Mrs. Henderson knew she couldn't force her to speak. She understood that trust had to be earned and that it would take time. But she also knew she couldn't just stand by and watch as the light in Malena's eyes faded away. She resolved to do whatever she could to help, no matter how long it took. It was a night like any other in Millwood, a small town where nothing much ever happened. Rain lashed against the windows, the wind howling like a banshee in the chimney, creating an eerie symphony that echoed through the empty streets. Inside their homes, tucked safely in their beds, the townsfolk slept, oblivious to the horrors unfolding in the house at the edge of town. They were wrapped in the warmth of their blankets, dreaming peacefully. John was in a rage, fueled by cheap whiskey and a simmering resentment that had taken root in his soul. His anger had been building for weeks, festering like an open wound. Malena sat huddled on the floor, her small body trembling, her eyes wide with terror. She had seen this rage before, but tonight it felt different, more dangerous. He loomed over her, a dark silhouette against the flickering light of the television. His shadow seemed to grow larger, more menacing with each passing second.
The argument was the same as always, a vicious cycle that never seemed to end. He accused her of being ungrateful, a burden, the reason his life had fallen apart. His voice was filled with venom, each word a dagger aimed at her heart. His words, slurred and venomous, washed over her, each one a blow to her already bruised and battered spirit. She felt herself shrinking, trying to disappear.
Then came the screams, shattering the fragile peace of the night. Not the muffled whimpers of previous nights, but blood-curdling shrieks that tore through the night, piercing the silence of the storm. They were cries of pure, unadulterated terror. Neighbors stirred in their sleep, unease prickling at the edges of their dreams. They awoke with a start, hearts pounding, but none dared to investigate. But none dared to venture out into the storm, into the darkness that clung to the house at the edge of town. Fear kept them rooted in their beds. And then, as suddenly as they began, the screams stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. Silence descended once more, heavy and suffocating. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath. The storm raged on, but inside the house, a different kind of storm had passed. And Malena was gone, leaving behind only the echoes of her screams. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the storm a distant memory. But the horror of that night lingered, a shadow cast over the town of Millwood. Malena was gone, vanished without a trace. John, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes reeking of alcohol, claimed she'd run away. Nobody believed him. The police searched, of course. They dragged the river, combed the woods, but Malena was never found. John, under the weight of suspicion and his own guilt, spiraled further into his demons. He died a year later, his liver finally giving out, his secrets going with him to the grave.
But the story didn't end there. Whispers turned to rumors, rumors to legend. They said that Malena's spirit, unable to find peace, haunted the town, seeking revenge on the adults who had failed to protect her. And the bathtub, where her life had been cruelly cut short, became the focal point of her rage.
A chilling legend was born. They said if you bathed after 10 p.m., when the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest, Malena would find you. She would drag you under the water, her tiny hands, now ice-cold and strong, holding you down until your lungs burned and your vision went black. To be continued. Thank you all for stopping by to watch part 1 of this eerie tale from Father Lokk's Horror House Season 2. Welcome to the family, all new subscribers. We see ya, and it's such an honor to call you a Lokk. Please subscribe and hit your notification bell if you haven't already. Be safe out there, and in the words of Father Lokk, always remember and always know that he loves y'all. Bye, family, and thank you for being a great member of it.